How's it going, Helldiver? And today we're going to be talking about a topic that's kind of been a strangle over the conversations going on in the Helldivers 2 community, which is about difficulty. Apparently, Arrowhead did an interview saying that they were basically listening as Helldivers 2 players ask for tougher endgame content, teasing that devs are currently looking for ways to ramp up difficulty for Helldivers. In an exchange on the game's official Discord, a fan asked directly if new, more complex difficulties or tougher enemy variants would be coming, and it was said currently there are a lot of enemies that don't really feel like they're actually heavy enemies. They explained, adding that all but 2 enemies get one-tapped by recoilless. The majority of the threat of the Leviathan was its ragdoll, but after that was removed, they don't have really an effect on player, which I completely disagree. And I think if you honestly, I will say, I'll keep it real, I'm going to be a little harsh on Arrowhead real quick. I think that's a little out of touch. I don't think the major issue of the Leviathan was that you're ragdolling me to Kingdom Come, is that you had a mechanic where you would get one-shotted, and at the time, obviously it's changed a little bit now, but at the time it was, if you weren't in a mega city, you were getting one-shotted and there's nothing you really could do about it. It was GG, no re, have an instant one-shot to your face, call it a day, which just doesn't feel good, which is what the majority of the reason why players hated it. It wasn't that I'm getting ragdolled out the ass. I mean, I play automatons, a bunch of players play automatons, and I get ragdolled on automatons way more than I ever got ragdolled by a Leviathan. The issue was that the Leviathan had one-shot mechanics that were undodgeable and uncounterable unless you're killing the beast or the enemy. You couldn't at the time break the turrets that were one-shotting you, which made no sense, since you have factory striders that had the same thing, where you have the top autocannon on the chassis that would one-shot you or ragdoll the hell out of you, and you had 2 rotary cannons that, I mean, if you got caught lacking and weren't playing to cover, you're dying in like 2 to 3 seconds. It was no playing around. But even a factory strider could be made useless if you were able to just focus on its weaponry, besides of focusing on the at the time funny little one-shot the foot gimmick or one-shotting the eye. So I do think that their reasoning for why the threat of the Leviathan was there is a little bit wrong. You know, that's kind of not why no one liked it. It's not because it was too hard and it was players didn't want to adapt. It was just that you made an enemy that had a one-shot mechanic that was borderline undodgeable. They go on to suggest that in introducing more resilient enemy types on higher difficulties could give players a reason to rethink their strategy. The community manager, Baskinator, is quick to acknowledge the feedback, even if she can't share details. I can't really share the exact plans, but we are all looking for ways to provide more challenge to players. Personally, I don't think that is the way to introduce challenge into Helldivers 2. I've said it before on stream, and I'll say it again here. To me personally, the difficulty in Helldivers is dealing with a chaotic situation and trying to beat the mission timer while also 100%ing the entire map, dealing with modifiers. I think a lot of the time Helldivers doesn't really play into the fact of making the situation beyond super chaotic on those higher level difficulties, and there's a lot of moments where you can have a level 6 mission have way more chaotic and challenging difficulty than a super Helldive, and then obviously you can have a super Helldive that feels like a level 5 mission. There is situations and there is things that I hear people say that I low-key don't agree with or don't understand. I am all for making super Helldive a little bit more challenging in the right way. I don't want you to just spam factory striders at me or spam war striders at me, even though they obviously die one shot to recoilless. But if you just spam high level tier enemies at me, all you're going to do is then make the community you're gonna force players to want anti-tank armor AP5. You're gonna force players into the AP3 and up category, which is going to kill like any kind of like semblance of like balance, because then we're going to start entering the power or the arms race, okay, where players are going to be constantly wanting to out damage the entire monster of fucking army of factory striders coming at them. There was no details revealed, but it does confirm that Arrowhead has heard players who want the late game to be more punishing, and that some kind of answer may be on our way. Whether that means entirely new difficulty modes or upgrading enemy behavior, Arrowhead hasn't really said anything about that. But like I said, I personally just think they should make the higher level difficulties feel much more chaotic, as well as possibly lowering the mission timer. That is something that I feel like should honestly change the difficulty a lot. It would be a little bit more challenging as well, because you have to rush through this now if you want to properly get everything done. Imagine if on Super Helldive, instead of having the casual 40 minutes that you usually do, you now have only 25 minutes to deal with the totality of Super Helldive. You don't even have to increase the player not the player numbers. You don't even have to increase the objectives, even though I do feel like there should be a sizable increase of sub-objectives from difficulty 9 to difficulty 10 and so on from each objective. I do feel like having just 5 objectives is a little bit lackluster. It would be nice if there was 8 sub-objectives with basically only heavy to fortress level outposts on Super Helldive, as well as lowering down the timer from maybe 25 is a little bit too steep, but lowering taking off 10 minutes off the timer to make it to where it's only 30 minutes to do all that, and then introduce a lot more enemy aggression and just keep it at that. I don't think I need to be getting spammed level Factory Strider level enemies, tanks and hulks only to be challenging. You could have a situation where instead of having a basis filled, I honestly imagine a situation where usually where you get sent 20 commissars or troopers on bots, you now have to deal with around 50 bots. I don't know if the engine could handle that. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea, but it would be more interesting to see situations where it's not just them sending the highest armor penetration or armor class enemy at me to force me into using just a recoilless. So for the time being, Helldiver 2's most skilled squads will have to wait to see what's next. But I do want to say this personally, if you are on the side of the game being super easy and you would like to be seeing the Super Helldive be harder, I will ask you to come up with some better arguments personally. Not because I think, you know, the game needs to be easier or anything. I really don't. I can care less. I mean, I do Super Helldive all day, no problem. The issue is, from my opinion, is that we're using bad arguments to push for change. Okay, saying that Super Helldive is too easy, or the harder difficulties are too easy in Helldivers because if you have the team that knows what they're doing, it's piss easy, brother. That is the situation with any video game possible. Elden Ring or FromSoft games are piss easy if you know what you're doing and you know how to play the game. If you play a Destiny 2 raid master, even though that game is easy already, if you play a Destiny 2 raid and you have a team that knows what they're doing and they have good loadouts and they have a firm grasp of the mechanics, the raid will be easier than a strike. If you play Super Helldive and you have a team that all understand what they're doing, how to handle situations, how to deal with sub-objectives by themselves that can solo objectives, yes, the game will be easy. Now, that isn't me saying that you should go find people who are absolute dog shit at the game to make the game harder for yourself. I'm just saying is that stop using the game is easy because I have friends who are good at the game argument, because you sound stupid. It doesn't make any sense. Let's come up with some better arguments for why difficulty in the game, or why difficulty should be, or why the harder difficulty should be hard. There is much easier and simpler arguments you can make that aren't bad than this game is easy because I have friends who are good at the game. So, Arrowhead's track record of responding to community feedback, there's a good chance that the difficulty curve will keep players on their toes, possibly, but I wouldn't hold your breath on it. I do feel like Arrowhead's probably just a little too scared to push the needle either way and are trying to tread this little middle ground that they have currently going. So, tell me what you guys think down below, and I'll see you next time.